Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the November edition of The Stew, the monthly recap video where I talk about a bunch of meaningful media that I've consumed in the past month. Let's go ahead and dive in because we've got some pretty heavy hitters. And if you would like to talk about any of these things with me or get featured in one of these videos, go ahead and check out the Discord or the Patreon in the description. I will be discussing spoilers through all the things I talk about. So if you don't want spoilers, go ahead and watch these things before I talk about them. The first thing I want to talk about is the Netflix show Arcane, which is based off of the story, characters, and locations found in the game League of Legends. If you have not played League of Legends, don't worry. You do not need to play League of Legends, and honestly, some people recommend you don't. From my standpoint, as someone who played very little amounts of League of Legends, I will go ahead and tell you that Arcane blew me out of the water. Arcane was a fantastic, beautifully animated show, and it was quite expensive, but you can really tell how each dollar was utilized because that show is a work of art. It is so beautiful. And that show literally made me want to play League of Legends so badly because I wanted to see more of these characters. And I'm not going to play League of Legends. That is not my type of game. I'm sorry. Joining me to talk about Arcane and what it meant to us is my brother-in-law and photographer, Hanz. He was the first person to tell us to watch the show back when season 1 aired, and he has been telling us constantly to watch it. And we didn't until this very month where we watched both season 1 and season 2. Without further ado, I'd love you all to meet him. We're going to start off with the first question. The real big question is, I know Arcane was a series that you told us to watch many times. And because you told us to watch it so often, it really was impactful and meant a lot to you. What did Arcane really mean to you?
That's the big question. Oh man. I think for me, it taught me there's a lot of variance when it comes to making the life that you want or the life that you can have with the people around you. I think it taught the importance of having an environment that can further cultivate and nurture your safety, however that looks. Because I think seeing the interaction with Vi and Powder, like the drastic difference with Silco kind of adopting Jinx or Powder at that time, and seeing how Jinx was just handling all the grief and the trauma and was just festering in without feeling like she was fully cared for or loved until towards the end. But after it was already too late, at least with her relationship with Silco and having that like father figure. Vi's case, I think even throughout her time growing up, she did get more chances, more opportunity to spend with Vander, really cementing that idea of I have to keep on going, not because it's only for me, but because I care about the people around me and being able to have that protection for them. So I think more than anything, I just saw the different motivations that people have as they go through life. And I think for me, it showed me the importance of why each action that we do, that I do, and anyone does is so pivotal because it can play such a large role in someone else's life.
Interesting. So I know you mentioned Vi and Powder and Vander and everyone. I know that the main sort of point of Arcane was there's also this huge class divide between the people of Zaun and the people of Piltover. But you mentioned a lot of people from Zaun. Was that because I see them a little bit more community oriented, whereas people in the higher city of Piltover, they were more sort of in their own bubbles? Or were there also some characters in Piltover that you resonated with and you saw this sort of community forming and their own ambitions in that side too?
That's such a good observation because I don't think I see that with Piltover at all. I don't think something that comes to mind. I think everyone or a large majority of people recognize the situation that they were in Zaun and trying to sustain what they did have if they couldn't make it any better, but at least not let it get any worse. Yeah. I think that's something that was heavily showcased throughout season 1. And when it comes to the characters on Piltover and seeing that class divide, a lot of the people, let's say, for instance, Mel or Jace or all of them, there was an individual focus for why they wanted to bring Hex Tech into the world. And you saw that contrast effect between Victor and Jace, where Victor referenced, like, I'm also from the Undercities. Like, what are you trying to say? Like, kind of having that collectivistic mentality, but seeing that it wasn't being fully welcomed and held with such regard in Piltover, at least for the the High Council.
Yeah, no, I could see that. And the way that you mentioned it too is I think Piltover has a specific idea similar to, our world today, is that things get worse because of also other people from outside influences. It can make my situation a lot worse. Whereas people from Zon, they're like, it is already pretty bad. It's not necessarily that like Piltover is making our life necessarily like worse, even though that there are in certain regards. But it's like we're focused on trying to make it better. Whereas Piltover is like, we don't want it to make it worse. And so I see that, especially with like Silco and Vander's ambitions to like, to sort of unify and create the country, or I guess, of Zon. It was like they really wanted to strive for something greater, whereas Piltover didn't want to get things ruined. But that's a good point. I think also you mentioned a lot of those characters, but do you have a specific character that you resonate a lot with, or like that's your favorite character in the entire show?
I think when I first watched season 1, the character that I did like was Jinx the most. Maybe because she is the youngest sibling, and so then just wanting to do something that could contribute to something, but also recognizing not having the capability to at times. I think I resonated with the dynamic of just wanting to help, but not necessarily knowing how to help. So I think seeing Jinx's storyline unfold is something that I really like how they portrayed her story.
Interesting. But you said season 1. Is that also in season 2?
Well, I think for season 2, it just further completes season 1. I think it just highlighted that despite anything you do go through in life, there's an opportunity to still create something different, to create a different reality that you envision, if not with the people around you, but also for the people that you care for, even if you're out of the picture. And I think that is something that I saw with Jinx's sacrifice, or alleged sacrifice. What? That is just something that I saw where in the end, she had reached the point where she provided the same safety that her sister Vi would have provided for her. And so she did it in return.
Yeah.
I think that's how I viewed it.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the way things have gone and the way that Jinx understands herself and understands her role in society, she's always felt that, that she is a Jinx. So I think her sort of taking herself out of that equation was a way to care and, let the others live their life in the way that she would have wanted them to, which, we could get into the intricacies of, not wanting to be a burden on someone by stepping out of their life. But I think that you mentioned like it felt like a complete series. I do think that season 1 and season 2 just feel like just one giant show. I think it's really hard to distinguish between the two. But I know the biggest thing that people talk about is how rushed the series had felt. And since we're talking about Jinx and her character development, did you feel that Jinx herself, from the character that was developed in season 1 and the character that moves on to season 2, was she rushed in any aspects? Or did you feel that the whole show as a whole felt rushed to you?
I think a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
One with Jinx's quote unquote redemption at the end, just recognizing if you are in a dark place, it's not that simple to just like pop out of it, right? And we see that instance where Echo is trying to talk to Jinx and just constantly rewinding time. He's like, wait! But I think that aspect did feel rushed because there had to have been something that could have been communicated, whether through Echo sharing what he saw in the past or in the alternate reality, and being able to express that to Jinx, where she's like, you know what? There's still a reason to keep on fighting. Like there's still something there, if not for my reality, but also to recognize that Echo left the reality where everything was better off, than maybe seeing that, oh, if he came back from that, then I can't give up on him yet. Like there's still someone that's counting on me directly and someone that knows the potential that she had.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because the way that you bring it up is that Echo was someone who also relied on Jinx in a way, because I think at the heart of the show is just Jinx and Vi, and you can understand that Jinx feels such immense like grief and blame for how Vi's life had turned out, whether it was Vander, whether it was Milo and Clagger, I think their names were. But I think Echo was sort of this free variable where he kind of was there, not really, but he was kind of there amongst them all together when they were children, and as they grew up. Now, when he comes back to her in that moment, like he had always been there. Like they were, even though they grew up together, they were just, two sides of the same coin at one part. So I think that's a really good point that you bring up there. In terms of the rushed feeling. So this show, I don't really define a lot of shows like this, but this is probably one of the very few shows that I felt binging it does the show a disservice. Because the way that Sam and I watched season 1, we binged the entire thing. I was not that big a fan of season 1. And that was just because I felt things had gone very fast. But when watching season 2, we watched it as it was coming out. Having those week-long breaks in between acts really allowed me to sit with the characters, to think about the show a lot, to really feel and to really understand the world rather than it just all being sort of displayed to you. But I know you had a very unique experience in which you watched season 1 when it came out, but you also dove very deep into lots of video essays and lots of like learning about the world and other things like that. Because both you and I, we don't know anything about League of Legends. We've never played the game. I've played the game, but I don't like the game. But how do you feel that the break between season 1 and the hype for season 2, what did you feel about that period? Did you feel like you grew to love the show more as time went on? Or did you feel like, it was always like at the peak as soon as you first started watching it?
Ooh, I think something that I've realized when I do watch shows, and specifically for Arcane, the appreciation for each detail and the intricacy of the show itself developed by having that delay in between season 1 and season 2.
Yeah.
And it did grow more anticipation for season 2. Screaming my lungs out. I'm like, it's here. So I think more than anything, having the chance to sit down and dive into like the character dynamics, how Arcane writes characters itself in different portrayals, really furthered the appreciation for each little aspect. And I think I can also say that about season 2, because granted, binging the 3 episodes immediately and one night also gave me the sense of a little bit of dissatisfaction. I was like, it's over now. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the time to really sit with each moment. And specifically, as we know, with the last 2 episodes, there's a lot that happens very quickly and very soon for a lot of the characters, with many different plot points happening. So I think being able to take some time to simply analyze why I enjoyed the show specifically, what parts resonated, or why I grew admiration for certain details, I think that allowed me to have a more fruitful experience entering season 2.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Because like there's certain aspects where, like, for example, Maddie at the end of season 2 you find out her betrayal, and then she also dies and like almost immediately, which is like, yeah, like that's what you get kind of thing. But also it was like so fast that it was like, well, I didn't really hate her for that long. I didn't really like her, but I was like, oh, how could she? And then immediately it's like solved. It was like, oh yeah, like, and I don't really think about Maddie anymore because it was like over like that. But had that betrayal happened and then some time went on, maybe, like it was in a different act or something like that, I would have really cemented like my hate for Maddie. Like, how could she do this? But I think a lot of those moments, like between the gaps, I think watching at least 3 episodes, all like the acts together, and then like spreading out like the time in between really lets you, appreciate those details, really learn about it. And I know, like, I've been scrolling the Reddit community. This is one of the very few shows where it has invaded every sort of corner of my mind that I was like, let me just go to Reddit, see all the memes, see all the details, see all the things that people are talking about. And that made me love the show even more because of that myself. But I want to get back to the point about details. So as a photographer, I know you spent a lot of time focusing on details, editing, and just making sure each picture looks as perfect to you as possible. Do you think that love for details comes from your experience as a photographer, or is it something more like you feel that's innate with you?
Maybe it's also just developed over time with photography itself, because I think it really highlights, yes, you have the main focus, but you also to realize if there's something in the background or if there's something in the forefront, like however it is displayed, it adds some sort of significance, because everything in itself is a way of telling a story. Everything is storytelling. So I think that appreciation for the minute details definitely adds an extra layer that I found with like the passion in photography.
Interesting. Interesting. In terms of storytelling for Arcane, for me, if it had not been as rushed, it would have been perfect. I think as you define like the characters and their interactions and really like their ambitions and their motivations, everything that you talk about is really what made me like the show. Because even though it's a sci-fi world and there's a lot to understand of the world, it's primarily character driven. And because of the character driven story, that allowed me to stay. I was telling Sam, like, I've only watched ever the first Dune movie, but I did not care for the characters. And that made me not like the movie. The world building and everything is intense, but because I didn't like the characters, at least from the first movie, I probably will watch some others. But from just the first movie, I didn't like the characters. I did not like Timothée Chalamet. And because of that, it didn't make me want to go into the world. It didn't really make me care about the storytelling. So on the flip side, with Arcane, the characters made me want to understand what's going on, right? And so now back to the question of storytelling, like, how do you feel about the storytelling in this compared to other pieces of media that you've seen?
Okay, I think, granted, they are both animated shows or animated masterpieces, but I would say Arcane's storytelling and let's say Into the Spider-Verse are some of my favorite artworks. I'm going to say artworks at this point because it's not simply visually, but also with the emotion that is added to each character. And again, feeling a sense of appreciation for why they do each action. So let's say for Arcane, I would rate it like 9.7 because there is that room for improvement. I think the storytelling really makes you feel something, at least for the characters themselves. It makes you care about why they are suffering, why they have such passion to keep on fighting. Like, why is there something that's pushing them forward for either side, whichever side, like anyone's perspective, whether it's any conflict amongst people is on, or if it is built over and their motives. There is that sense of humanity. And I think Victor puts it perfectly together. Everyone is just trying to find, like, there's something that drives people to continue forward. And I think, at least for Arcane and like the storytelling, I do point it as like love, because there is a factor of pain that's also incorporated into that. I think you see that with not all the characters. Every character is going through something. And in a way, that's the only thing that kept on allowing them to continue fighting for something.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think this is also what we talked about earlier is like, I think one of the rushed aspects of it is because they're showing you like every sort of important moment and they're telling you all the things in their life that they're trying to fight for, but it doesn't really dwell on the times like in episode 7 of season 2 of what they are living for. And being able to see that community where they're all happy, where things are going great, like that was one of the best moments for me because it was like, this is what life could be for them, right? I love the fighting. I love the animation. I love everything about that. But it's just constant fighting and you know their motivations and you know this stuff, but you don't know the sort of the after, like what life could be like. But I like that you mentioned Victor because I think in the entire show, Victor is my favorite character out of everyone personally. And I think one of the reasons why I like Victor so much is because I've been sort of on this kick with the idea of perfection. And, you know, my previous videos have been about perfection and talking about perfection. And I think seeing Victor as someone who felt that he was flawed, felt that he was imperfect due to his leg and due to his sickness, and sort of struggling to find that perfect life, his perfect being, his glorious evolution, that was really like heartfelt to me because one of the things that Arcane does really well is it has great inclusion with many different people, many different cultures, and also a lot of representation for disabilities. So when it came to Victor, I really liked that he was striving so much to be perfect and to fix everything so that they're perfect. But by the end, he realizes perfection is not worth it because then you don't have pursuit. And I really like that. But another part of the show that I do consider perfect is the music. So what was your favorite song? What do you feel about the music? Because I know Spider-Verse also has the same exact feeling of wow, they really made a show that revolves a lot around the music because they specifically made all these songs so good and so like integral to the soul of the piece of media. So, what did you feel about the music?
Okay. First, I love what you did mention about Victor and like finding the struggle between pursuit of perfection and then once you do complete it, what is there left? Like, there is no perfection in reality to that aspect. So I did like that. Now, regarding the soundtrack and the music of Arcane, I was dancing my heart out and vibing to Renegade. Was it Renegade? I believe it was like the song that plays with Davika and Schmitz, I think.
Oh yeah,
That's like going weird. Where she gets her arm after Jinx gives her like the whole thing. So I think what Arcane does really well with music, it allows you to have fun with it. I think it really pulls you into the scene itself, whether that's with, okay, yes, there's the whole thing with the lyrics. Some lyrics are too descriptive.
Too on the nose. They're like, remember me. And what are they doing? They're trying to remember him. It's like, it's a good song. It's a great scene. It's a little too literal. It needs to be like poetry. It's a little too literal.
Yeah, but the song by Stromae in the scene between Jinx and, or Powder and Echo, beautiful. Absolutely lovely. Also incorporating like the slower frame rate, as we know, is also just highlighting Echo's ability to rewind in time by 4 seconds. Little details, little stuff like that. But I think overall, that song and the one that plays with Savik and Schmitz are some of my favorite ones. One, because of the high energy. I think that's what Arcane does so well. It incorporates music into a way to summarize what characters are going through rather than also having to, like, quote unquote, drag out history or things that have taken place where you should be caught up already. No, that also kind of contradicts what we mentioned earlier, saying like some pieces felt too rushed. But I think the way that Arcane used music to show flashbacks and to make sure we are understanding every crucial detail without making it very convoluted with heavy details is a fantastic way to grab the audience's attention, of some fun music around, and also just display the beautiful artwork of the animators.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Like all those music montages, they're like, oh my God, like I want to watch this one again and again because it's so beautiful how everything's crafted. But on the idea of like rushed, because there's that one song where they go in and they're gassing Zon, Caitlyn and her crew. And it's not that that's a problem. It's that the sort of consequences and the weight of the decisions kind of moves on so quickly because the music montage is all you see and it kind of just goes on, right? That's the real thing that makes it feel rushed. It's not because they have the beautiful music montages, but it's just that like the weight and like the interactions between characters and everything feels like it just moves on too quickly. Like, for example, like when Isha passed away, but the rest of the show, like Isha isn't really mentioned once. Like the weight and the impact of her loss is gone, or her loss is there because, you know, Jinx is feeling awful. Like everyone's feeling awful from that loss, but they don't really mention it, you know? They don't really like bring her up in a way that's like, yeah, like Jinx says like, finally, when I'm with you, Isha, it's like I'm wearing glasses. And now it's like, well, okay, they kind of just moved on. Like Jinx is mourning the loss, but like we gotta go. We gotta do the fight. We gotta do the fight. And so I think that's the reason why it does feel rushed.
But the creators did say it was always meant to be 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Do I mean more episodes, less episodes, or what happened on that aspect that kind of rushed everything towards the end?
Yeah. I think the idea of 2 seasons is, you know, what they had in mind, but I don't think the idea of, you know, how long each episode was, how many episodes each season was, that wasn't really kind of up to them. Because I know that the regular runtime for, I think all of them, they're like 45 minutes. And then I think the very last one was like 50. And I mean, if you look at Stranger Things, season 4 of Stranger Things was an entire mess. Like episode 1 was like 40 minutes. Episode 6 was like an hour and 26 minutes. Episode 7 was like 2 hours and 30 minutes. It's like, well, like what, like, it's insane. Like there was no like consistency across the board, but they don't really need to because they're like, screw it. We've got like Netflix money. You know, everyone loves Stranger Things. Let's just do everything. Let's put all the scenes, all that stuff. And if Arcane had that, I know it's an animated show and it would have been way harder to extend all those scenes, you know, because people are hand drawing it. then it would just take a lot more time, a lot more resources, but it would have been so, so good to see all those moments, to see Echo talking with Jinx, saying, like, there is a good version of you out there. There is someone that, you can be. Like, you are not just hopeless. And then now you feel hopeless right now, but you could be someone. Like, I need you to be here with me on this, but they cut it out because budgets and stuff like that.
Okay, that kind of got me thinking into, is pain, or at least losing someone inherently, does it bring the opportunity for people to do better? But I think going with Jinx's timeline, or Powder's timeline and Echo's timeline, she lost Vi, particularly close to her. But seeing that as a result, as opposed to the other timeline that we've been following throughout the 2 seasons, she didn't technically lose her. Like, okay, like this is like the end point. Yeah. So she lost the ability to be within like that safe space.
Yeah.
Does that happen? Anyway.
Yeah. No, I think when you talk about like, does getting lost allow you the chance to be better, I think there's like this whole wheelhouse of like, if you've ever seen the movie Split, right, with James McAvoy, and he looks at the girl and at the very end she's got like scars or something, like she was abused, Anya Taylor-Joy, and so the main character is like, you're one of us, like you suffering, and so that's why he backs off. I think that idea that certain people are better off or like changed in that way because they've experienced trauma is not really like the necessary point of like that you can become better. I think there's obviously a wake-up call, and you, like, let's say if you lose a family member or lose like a friend, like it's like, oh crap, like I'm awake to this, like I just lost something significant. But I think it opens up the idea of you lost something, but now you are paying attention to everything else you have, because in that alternate universe where Powder loses Vi, like she doesn't lose Vander, and she doesn't lose this whole community of people and like Echo and everything else like that to really help her process that grief and help everyone process that grief together, because Vi was an important part of the community.
Yeah.
So I think that to me was a little bit more important rather than just the loss itself, but the reframing of your mind and your understanding of what else you have in your life besides just what you've lost.
I like that. In the moment where we first see Vi and Jinx get into the dispute after everything goes wrong for season 1, right? And being adopted into Silco's circle, yeah, and now really having that foundation. It's like just accepting what was the closest opportunity where she could feel safe again, even if she lost some of like the most important things to her at that time.
Yeah, that's true. And I do think initially, like, I didn't know Silco was that important in her life. He was never really there, to be honest. But then seeing the flashbacks and being like, oh, Silco was there with Vander, and they knew Vi and Powder's mother. And I was like, okay, I understand a little bit more now. Now I understand why Silco went there, was like, hi, like, like, where are you? And then gave her that hug at the end, and I was like, oh, not only is Powder Jinx feeling the loss too, but Silco has also been harboring this loss for a long time. Like, I mean, he was best buds with Vander, and then they fought and all this. But back to the music. So what was your ultimate favorite song from the series? One that, like, if you were to take out every single other song, this one would be the best.
I feel like this is difficult. Tamor, you can't do this.
It's not difficult for me. I have my answer.
Really? Okay. But what is it being classified on? Is it the excitement that I get? Everything? Okay.
What you feel, the excitement, the music, the lyrics, the way you remember the show because of it.
With a holistic approach. What made me feel, I think it was a song that does play when Isha, she sacrifices herself. Even though it's not a song that I've gone back to listen to, but I think because of the same reason, because it starts to stir up the idea of fully knowing that you're coming to terms essentially with every moment that you've lived, not in the harsh reality of like, this is the life I've lived, more so like, I'm glad I got these moments, and if this is where it ends, I'm content with that.
Interesting.
I think hearing that up, or like the positive tune to the song itself, like it's not necessarily sad or like it's not hyper or anything.
Yeah, it does feel like a sweet melody, like a little bit more epic, like it feels like kind of like an opera song.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And
yeah. that's not an answer I was expecting from you. I was, but so now because of this, you're not allowed to listen to any other song. Just that one. That one is the one.
Okay, but as a second favorite, it does have to be the French song because that one, I think, just seeing it like for the first time, just made me think like that is something that I would want to experience, like being in that atmosphere and having that such tender care between like the characters in that specific environment. That's another favorite.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make me feel like tears.
I agree. I think the French song that plays when Echo and Jinx are dancing, I think that one in particular, it essentially makes you feel like you're falling in love. Even though that the lyrics are not like, I love you, but they're like, oh, like you're my enemy and stuff like that. I think that one is just like, it feels so characteristic of the show and the characters, but it's my close second to my number one song.
Number one.
It is Spin the Wheel.
Spin the Wheel
by Heimerdinger.
Come on.
That one is my favorite song out of the entire series. And it brings such like an unbridled optimism to the show. I actually really like the folky tune. I'm a fan of like Noah Kahn and other like folk bands like Mumford and Sons. I do like their music. But like the feeling that I get with that song is unmatched from anything. Because if you listen to the lyrics, it is so optimistic in a world that has not been optimistic like once, right? Everything has been about suffering. But Heimerdinger, who's been like super cute and all this stuff, he sings such an optimistic song of just not only like a culmination of his story, but also just like the idea of like spin the wheel, like take a chance, see what happens, just go do something, makes me feel all the emotions too, because like him as a character, like he was over there in Piltover, as the High Council. He wasn't taking a chance. He wasn't living. He wasn't doing the stuff that he wanted to. And then it's just when he goes and meets Echo, when he goes through that whole arc, and when he goes to this alternate universe, which he has like 1,000+ days where he's living through it, and he's like, crap, like, even though this character had so much time in their life and could live so much longer, they weren't actually doing anything. They weren't actually living. And that makes me feel like there's so much more that I want to be doing. There's so much more that Arcane speaks to me that I want to do. Like, I don't want to just sit in my high tower. Like, I want to go there. I want to help people. I want to build the relationship. I want to build a community. No matter what happens, like, that's the thing that I want to do. And that's why Heimerdinger is the top 10 character of all time. And that song is amazing. I think, I tell you, like, the more I think about that in respect to everything, I'm like, dang, Heimerdinger, though, like, he came out of nowhere. And even though people saying he's not dead because he's part of a species that when they die, they disappear to Bandle City based on the League of Legends lore or whatever, it still meant so much to me that his whole, like, existence and everything, like, sort of accumulated to that moment. And even though he wasn't that big or that important to, like, the main plot, my dude Heimerdinger has always been right. He said, no, Jace, don't make this. Don't do that. And look what Jace did. He did it, and everything got ruined.
Man. Okay. Of course it would be that song. That does sound like a you type of answer.
Is such a good song, though. Like, I will listen to it, and I'll be like, oh, dang, like, he hit the vocals. Like, it was crazy because, like, the voice actor, Mike Wingert, did his Heimerdinger voice and then sang on top of it. I'm like, God dang, like, this is not even his normal voice, but oof, favorite song.
Oh man, something that you did mention, like, it's a very optimistic song for a show that portrays a lot of heaviness, or at least in that world specifically. However, in that reality, there does seem to be a lot of enjoyment already. And I think it really just highlights the beautiful life they could have had going forward. Because I think something that did come to mind, again, this is where I'm going like all over like the comments and everything on YouTube or Reddit, wherever it is. And the reason that Heimerdinger and Echo were in that reality, it's like, that's what they got, right? Just a different alternative universe. But then Jace going and seeing the atrocity, essentially, it's because in every other reality, if he lives and he follows through, that's the reality that he gets. So it's not something else. It's the same timeline, but just fast forwarded. And that has to do with when Victor catches like Jace and he's like investigating like where the first like piece of magic blew up in the apartment.
Yeah.
And he just tells Jace like, "Oh, am I interrupting?" Like fully knowing that Jace might have like done something drastic, right? I think again, going back to those details, so everything just adds another layer to the meaning.
Yeah.
But I do see like that is a good song, and also a little buddy, a little fluff ball. He was right all along.
He was right, but he was wrong for a very long time. That's the point. You know, he wasn't doing stuff. And then he was right. And then he was right. And that's all that matters. But along with meaning and the whole Jason Victor thing, I think personally, I mean, it's kind of obvious. Arcane is just warning us about AI because this is an animated show that hired so many people to painstakingly create such vivid art and this amazing world that's a accumulation of like decades of like League of Legends lore and stuff like that. And they work so hard. They're using like charcoal, they're using watercolor, they're using so many different sort of mediums of art. And the overall thing is this technology, hex tech, which is just an analogy for AI, is going to destroy us. Because when it comes down to it, like AI is being used to replace a lot of work that art and artists do. And I think that's probably the saddest part, because as someone who's trying to write a book and who's querying books to agents and stuff, hearing that AI, oh, they're planning to make like 8,000 books next year based on AI, it's like, I don't want to read 8,000 AI books. I don't want to watch the next season of Arcane that's made entirely by AI. I want to watch what people create. I want to watch what people live through and put out into the world as their experience, as how they feel, and how they just want to express themselves. I don't want to do that with AI. I don't want to do that with machines. We should not evolve into robots, and that's going to be everything. Because at the end of the show, there's nothing. You know, it's just robots and wastelands and stuff like that. And if AI is all perfect, then there's nothing. But that's what I feel like. If anything, Arcane is just telling us, hey, AI is not good. It's not good. AI for little tasks like, hey, this email that I got from this unknown sender, yeah, you should probably not open it. That's spam. Like, oh, thanks, AI. But it's like, hey, I'm going to make you a masterpiece of a show that you can watch. And I'm like, no, that's okay. Like, I want to watch what people create. I want to like have these conversations with what people think. Like, I want to learn and hear different perspectives and everything else like that. I don't want AI to do the fun part of living.
I think it also just adds and speaks to seeing effort put into something. I think if you do go down the route of AI, let's take, for instance, ChatGPT, like one simple form of AI, right? Whether we do ask it to organize something for us or to simplify a specific task, craft an email response and just like, boom, send. You're also losing a lot of the meaning and intentionality behind those aspects if it's turned into a creative process. Where it's like, hey, I'm trying to get these thoughts out. I need some guidance, but don't really know. Yes, I do see some benefits with AI being able to generate brainstorming sessions with you. But then I do see the service it does, if that's like the main component and really separates the human aspect, which is intent and effort. I think I could see that.
Yeah.
What is AI struggling with if it's able to just do it like that? And we put a lot of more thought and care to highlight our lived experiences through the creative work that we do put out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't think about it in terms of effort, but you know, like, because we have limited time on this earth, it's like, hey, if I want to do something, I want to really make something, I have to dedicate, you know, essentially my life to it. And again, AI is like brainstorming and stuff. Like, I'm fine with that. When I search up code to program stuff, I'm like, Stack Overflow, like, let me figure out all this stuff. You know what? Let me just ask like ChatGPT, like, oh, he can find all the, or it can find all the things and just like pull it together. And then now like, oh, I can see it all there. And that's wonderful. I'm not like, you know, not thinking about something, but I am using that as a brainstorming. And I think about the rubber duck in terms of like engineering, right? Software engineering, they always have rubber ducks on their desk and they bring it up and they're like, okay, for this problem, let me talk to you through the problem. And in this process of talking to this rubber duck, I will come to the idea, and that will be my brainstorming. And it's just we're doing that, but now it's a machine, right? It's not that bad, but it's when that effort is minimized and now your sort of existence is being wiped away because hey, the machine can do it faster and more consistent and all this stuff. And it's like, well, I don't want necessarily consistency. I want honesty. I want integrity. I want the person. I want authenticity.
Where do you think, linking that back to Arcane, where do you think authenticity and integrity showed up for characters as they were battling with or utilizing hex tech? And was it even possible?
That's a good question. I think from the very beginning, it showcases it where Powder picks up the thing and the apartment blows up. It was like, yeah, we have something we shouldn't mess with, really. But I think it highlights it the most when Jace and Vi go to the mines, the Shimmer mines, for the first time. And although it's incredibly fast and like it felt like, oh, this is their first mission. Oh, like a kid was killed. Like now it's over. Like, wow, that was pretty quick. But the fact that, he pulls out the hammer for the first time, she's got the gauntlets for the first time, and they're going. And because of that, a kid dies. And you're like, oh crap. Not only did this technology like wreak destruction, but it actually like ruined and ended someone's life. And I think that's the same thing with AI. Like, oh, like if Netflix or any of them, like I've been hearing this stuff too, they're like, we want to make personalized content for everyone. As soon as, like, let's say you have Snoopy, right, as a character. Let's say, show me a show where Snoopy is dancing at a Christmas party. And it's like, boom, here you go. We're showing it to you. It's like, well, now you just ended someone's career who could have animated Snoopy dancing at a Christmas party, right? We have to live too, And it's like, when you take all that stuff away, when you give these really destructive tools and you just, use it for whatever you want. And now Jace, who's this builder, has this hammer, but now the hammer can shoot. It's like, why? Like, just give the builder a hammer. Don't give him a hammer that's also a gun, right? It's like, what are you doing? At that point, it's like, you've gone too far. You're lost in the sauce.
Lost in the sauce. Do you think, as someone that appreciates narratives and storytelling, that there could be some more positives to AI, or if it's like monitored in some specific way that could contribute to a positive creative flow?
Interesting. I have made a video about, I think it's called AI and a Story About Bananas, genetically modified memories.
That one's good.
I think the way I view AI is not as a creator, but as a tool. So in the sense, like in that video, I talk about, scanning like your loved one, like taking their picture and, feeding them some of like that personal history and like having this AI version of them tell you stuff like about their life. That feels like now it's kind of disrespecting the person because like they are gone and you need to feel like the grief and the loss and you need to appreciate those around you. You can't just be like, hey, let's just make AI versions of everyone and then I will never feel like they're gone, right? At that point, it's like you're creating a reality that's not the reality. But on the flip side, when you use it as a tool, I think AI is so useful for things that we consider mundane, like, for example, the emails. Or, for example, I know like for one application, because I'm a data analyst and I want to be a data scientist too, I had to do a machine learning algorithm that analyzed a lot of computing data for those who have Parkinson's disease. And with Parkinson's, they do have tremors in which when they type on the keyboard, the amount of time like it takes to press down and lift up will be different from someone who doesn't have Parkinson's disease. So they're able to just type, and those who have Parkinson's, they can type, and there'll be little distinctions between like early onset Parkinson's, late stage Parkinson's, and other things like that with how fast they type on the keyboard. But the real important part is that early section, right? Before anything has progressed too far, we can catch it. But because counting the seconds for every single keyboard click is just so much grunt work to go through, it would be so useful to have an AI just look at it, take all this information. Or like radiology, like a CT scan, or, you broke your arm, like let's do an X-ray, and then you have an X-ray, And if you can't really tell what's going on in the X-ray, pass it to an AI learning model that has looked at millions of X-rays and be like, it's probably the closest to like these. These look really close to it. And then now the doctor, rather than looking at millions of X-rays himself or herself or themselves, the doctor can just look at this information and be like, oh yeah, it is pretty close to these. I don't have to look at all that junk. I've saved a bunch of time, and now I can save someone's life quicker just because I don't have to waste my time with the grunt work. That's where I see AI is like the best thing. And that's why I love data, right? I love statistics, and because it's the only math that is not about random numbers. Like Sally goes to the store and buys 15 apples and she eats 3. How much does Sally have? Like, why is she buying 15 apples? That seems like a lot for a day. And she's like 5 years old. And so, but it's not about that. It's statistics is math about us. It's like, well, Sally took 1,000 steps to the store. She went in there. She paid this much money. She has this much money left in her bank account. What does that tell us about Sally? Like, oh, Sally, like, she took that many steps. Well, her, like, it's only, she took twice as many steps to get there. Maybe she took another trip, or maybe she's shorter. So then she had to take more steps to get to the store. Or you see her money, like, oh, she spent this much. Like, okay, she spent it with cash. Did she spend it with credit card? Oh, was it credit card? She has a credit card. Was it her credit card? She old enough to have a credit card? How much money does she have left in her bank account? You know, how is she doing socioeconomically? Like, what's her status? Like, all this stuff can come from data, which, again, privacy is something that, you know, is however much you want to share. But if you can take hold of your own data, if you can take all this information and be like, hey, I took 10,000 steps today. I took 9,000 steps tomorrow. I took 8,000 steps the next day. What does that say about me? You know, like, how is my walk? Like, how is my stuff? Like, how is my health? And I think that is so, so powerful when it comes to AI and machine learning and statistics, because I want to learn about people. That's the core of it. Like, I want to know more about people, and I want people to understand themselves. And I want them to know, like, hey, my finger hurt. Has it hurt before? Has, you know, like, has it hurt when you put it down, left, right, all this stuff? And now let's compare it to millions of other people who had their finger hurt in the same exact way. What was it? You know, and that's where I think AI is so, so great if it's used ethically. And it should not be used for drawing and making art and stuff like that. And it's like what? Like, I can understand, like, you use sketches or like you can trace over things, like you can practice as an artist, but hey, you're going AI model, make me content. It's like, at that point, you've lost the game, you know? It's like, it's over. So that's what Arcane really meant to me.
I like that. I think more than anything, it shows the value that people are willing to put into it.
Yeah.
Like, at least on the show aspect, because you did mention there was a lot of animators that were hired for producing such a masterpiece. And I think going back to like the AI discussion, as long as it's used to advance, is like the slippery slope, productivity in the day-to-day life, that is not a reflection of the creative process. However we like to envision creativity, I think that's where like AI usage is all right. Everything within moderation, as it's been said in the past. But I think, yeah, I could see a lot of value just of preserving what makes sharing a story so riddled with emotion and heart and effort that's not tainted by AI, which is void of that.
Yeah.
I think that's what comes to mind.
Yeah. And the best way that I can describe it is cooking. Like, when you cook a dish, you really put time and effort. You taste the flavors. You make everything like the best you want it to be, because you're going to eat it, or someone you love, like, you're making this for them or something like that. You're making it because you want it to be good, right? If you let a machine do the cooking, it's like, yeah, you can get food, but it might be just slop. It might not be like what you really want. But on the flip side is, when you're done eating, like, there's dishes, right? And you washing the dishes is fine. You can scrub them away and all that stuff. But we also have a dishwasher. Like, sure, the dishwasher might not clean every single thing perfectly, right? Just like AI cooking, but it helps you so much, because there is much more love to give when you're cooking and creating something than there is to just, you know, clean something and fix that part of that recipe, you know?
Yeah.
So
With this kind of going off of what you mentioned when it comes to like collecting data and being able to understand people more,
Mhm.
is it with interest to anticipate possible scenarios by being able to have like all the information, even like about oneself, where you're like, okay, I understand myself more? Because I think just in general through life, that is a tricky journey. How do we fully know ourselves? Because I think in each moment, it's something that's ever growing and expanding based on interaction we have with someone. Teaches us a lesson we reflect on, or something we go through. And even if to reference, let's say like Arcane, clearly we see that with the characters along the way. Like there's a lot of self-discovery and self-acceptance that you, and touching upon the aspect of data and having that information presented to us, is it to anticipate further events, or how do you view that?
That's a good question. So, as my professional experience as a simulation specialist helping train doctors, I know one fact. Doctors don't know anything about you. And I think that's the big distinction. They have studied a lot. They know a lot, but they don't know you. And when you come in and you have no history whatsoever, and you're like, oh, I don't feel so good. They take your blood pressure and they see it's like 140 or like 130 over 90. And you're like, oh, well, that's kind of high. I mean, like the perfect ideal one is 120 over 80 for an adult. But then again, everyone's different. So what does 130 over 90 mean? Is that normal for them? Is that what they're used to? Is that like healthy for them? But they're going to look at that and they're going to ask you, have you ever taken your blood pressure before? Is it like this? And if you don't know those answers, that's their baseline. That's what they're going to go off of. They're going to say, this might be the problem or it might not. We have no idea. And we don't know you. And when you don't know someone, you can't really help them to your best of your abilities. So when it comes to knowing more about yourself, in the same way the Arcane characters knowing more about themselves, it's so important to know the most you can about yourself, because when you are put in a position where you need help from someone, or you need something, or you are trying to do something, or you're injured, or you like, essentially, if you need any help, the best way you can help is by telling them, this is what I need. When Powder is left by Vi at the very beginning and she has a meltdown and she feels awful and she feels like a jinx, because Milo has been saying that. When she, she's a child, she's overwhelmed with emotion, she's overwhelmed with guilt. If she were able to, one, know herself and be like, I don't like that you're calling me a jinx. I know that I've done this. I know that I've done that. I know who I am. I know that deep down, like, this is my heart. Like, that mistakes are not defining anyone, right? But you are working towards something and you know deep down, like, this is who you want to be and this is who you are. That could make all the difference. That could literally make Powder stay as Powder and not become Jinx. As long as she knew herself and she was able to communicate effectively to those around her so that others knew who she was. Because that's how Echo feels. Like, when he first sees Powder in the alternate universe, he's like, well, like, I know you, like, stay away. But he doesn't know her because she is this complete different other entity. She's lived through an entire different life that he doesn't know. And when he does get to know her, even though they were in a previous relationship with the other Echo, he does fall in love with her too. And I think that's all it is. Like, when you really know someone, when they know themselves, when you can communicate with each other of just who you are as a person, when you can create art, when you can do things just to prove your existence and just prove, like, this is how you felt, this is how you understood the world, and this is how the world understands you. That's the number one thing. And that's the thing that makes us fall in love with everyone.
And that's why I say Arcane is a show about love, because it also adds and speaks to the ability to know oneself enough to reach out for help or to know others requires compassion and care and love. And that is something that we see throughout the show that gets twisted, that gets added on to each character's journey, or there's an absence and it's just filled with our pain.
Yeah.
I like that thought.
And it's also about self-love too. Because if you look at Jinx and Isha, Jinx could have been completely obnoxious and avoid Isha and, like, just dismissed her entirely. But Jinx, cared for Isha. But not only cared for Isha, cared for herself in the way that allowed her to open herself up to Isha. And I think that's very important too, because the relationship that they had with each other cannot work unless you care for the other and you also care for yourself too.
I like that. I think this is an off topic, but I think it adds to it. This was on Instagram. I came across a post that says relationships show you where you have yet to learn to love yourself or appreciate. And I think that also speaks to like the characters, because at least with the interaction between Isha and Jinx, Jinx does self-heal through being that older sister role model that she wished she would have had when she felt her loneliest. She's seen that transpire with Isha, and being able to be a safety net for her, but then also see what that looks like as being like the older sibling in this case, or as like the caretaker for Isha, and seeing like, oh, this is like an appreciation. Like I mean something to her.
Yeah.
And adding more value again to the interaction that they've shared.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
This is why Arcane is so good.
And it could have used more time, but they're making more. 100%. They're making more. We're going to go to the other locations. Jinx is alive. She's going to, if they were smart, they could make her the main character and she will be discovering stuff with us. So we're not feeling like we're just learning this world again. We understand like, oh, Jinx is there and she flies over to Ionia or Noxus and stuff. And she meets the other characters and the lore for League of Legends goes crazy and there's like literal demons and stuff. And it's like, what the heck? And so I think Jinx could be a great bridge to understand the other parts of the world, because now we understand her a lot already.
You think if they were to not go down that path, would you be satisfied with the story? What areas do you find satisfaction in where you're like, you know what, I'm content with it?
I think overall, the idea that the show is rushed is not really something that doesn't make me feel unsatisfied with the story. I do think that we could have got so much more meaning and meaningful moments between characters and specific dialogue. I don't think that it feeling rushed leaves stuff that I'm like, I want to see, kind of the next chapter. I just wanted to see more of this chapter. And so personally, if they don't include Jinx and the rest and they do something completely new and all that stuff, I'm satisfied. Like we watched 2 shows this month. It was Arcane and The Penguin. Both Arcane could, keep going. The Penguin, he might be in Batman 2 and all that stuff, but I feel completely satisfied with both of them. Like if there was no more upcoming, I'd be fine. I'd actually be kind of happy too, because I'm like, finally, like I need some things to end so then I can like experience new things and like be like, oh, this was so good. Like it's not dragged on for eternity, like something like Walking Dead or something. But I would have preferred a lot more meaningful moments within the chapters, not for the next one.
You said something so interesting that I think wraps up perfectly for Arcane, because, or let me phrase that, wraps up ideally for Arcane, because you said sometimes you need to let things end in order to experience new opportunities. And I think that's exactly what Jinx did. She had to let her identity as Jinx come to a close, be able to live a life that she could envision without having the memories and the voices that would pursue her in her new moments. Now she had to let go of things in order to move forward.
That's true. That's a great point. And just like Jinx, we also have to let this end too, because otherwise it would be too long. And already there's so much we can talk about Arcane. I think Arcane is so good because of the fact that it does feel so real. Like even though it's fantasy and all that stuff, the characters feel real. Their motivations feel real. The world and its problems feel similar to ours, And I think that's where we can find the most meaning from things, is when they really resonate with us and they teach us as well as, entertain us. So I want to say thank you for joining me on this podcast, Hanz.
First, thank you, Tamor, for your questions and just learning more insight about why Arcane is such a powerful piece of creative expression, not only visually, emotionally filled, and told through such a beautiful story, but also, So my name is Hanz, and I do photography. Anything that you can envision, if it's capturing when you are at your happiness, whether that's for a couple poses, photo shoots, or if it's with family members, anything you envision, that's something that I can do and provide a space where you feel most comfortable, most seen, and most appreciated, which is, I think, a theme that a lot of the characters in Arcane would have liked to have had. So, if you do anything with photography with me, I will make sure to provide that for you.
Thank you so much. If you want to reach out, I will put his portfolio link in the description as well as his Instagram account so you can check out the stuff there. He does work, amazing work in the greater Los Angeles area and areas around. So if you are in Maine or anything else, I apologize. He cannot get there unless you are doing a wedding or something like that. He does those too. You can hire him. You can fly out there and capture your entire lovely event.
Travel expenses not included, though.
Not included. But thank you,
Some more.
I think that was a great conversation. The next piece of media I want to talk to you all about today is the Max original because, to be honest, going into the Penguin, I did not have high hopes. I am burnt out from superhero stuff. From Marvel to DC to anything, I am just of the mind of, do I really want to watch another thing? But the Penguin was actually so freaking good. I was shocked about how good it was. And the reason why I loved it so much is the reason why I love something like Arcane. It is so character driven and you learn so much about the characters that I absolutely love it. But in the flip side, compared to Arcane, where I felt it was rushed and we didn't get enough time with the characters, the Penguin was the exact opposite, where we had so much time with these characters. To be honest, you could have probably cut out a lot from the Penguin and still had a very strong, solid show. But the fact that they showed us so much made me really love the characters, especially the character of Sophia. I came into the show ready for the Penguin, ready for a crime show, and I stayed for Sophia because Sophia had a great, wonderful origin story, and I really resonated with the character, especially rooted for her because she was treated so horribly by her father and her experience in Arkham. So much so that by the end of the show, the fact that she is still alive makes me very happy because if she had died, I would have been really bummed out because I really loved her as a character. She was set up so well. The other main character, Victor, who is essentially the Penguin's little protege and apprentice, who ultimately meets his demise at the end, was a fantastic character. I love this trope in TV where they introduce a character who doesn't really know anything about the world and you learn things with them. It's one of the reasons why shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender work so well. Aang was frozen for hundreds of years and he woke up and now it's all like, well, catch me up on all that I missed. And because Victor was not part of the sort of crime and underworld that the Penguin was a part of, you got to learn a lot through his perspective. And unfortunately, though you are rooting for him to get the heck out of there, he doesn't, and he perishes by the end, which makes the Penguin such a great character. I've seen a lot of comparisons to the Penguin and the Sopranos in regards to Tony Soprano and the Penguin being both two villain protagonists at the center of these stories. And I will say, I can see a lot of similarities between those two shows. Though The Sopranos went for a longer time and had a lot of amazing moments and scenes, The Penguin was very good. So good that even if they don't have a season 2, I am completely satisfied. It was such a tight, perfect little morsel of a show that I do not want anything more from The Penguin. If they did a season 2, I'm not against it, but I'm not really rooting for it. I would love to see him in the Batman 2 whenever that comes out, but at the moment, the Penguin has started his arc in the show and ended it for me too. But the show really meant a lot to me because I think it really shows me just how much character-driven stories really make a difference. Because for me, I love media that portrays characters and you really get to understand them. You know why they're doing what they're doing, and you really understand their fundamental desire to be loved, to be cared for, and to be connected. And I felt that the Penguin did such a good job, especially showing him as a sociopathic kid killing his brothers so that he could get all of his mother's love just for himself. I think that was so telling and so crazy to see, but also so understanding. By the end of the show, you are totally despising the Penguin. And it's amazing. They do a wonderful job of just fleshing out these characters. And even though I do have superhero burnout, this did not feel like a superhero show whatsoever. In fact, when I was watching it, when all of a sudden they would bring up the word Gotham or the Batman or something else like that, I was like, whoa, oh, that's right. I'm watching a DC show. I totally forgot. This was like, I thought I was watching some random crime show. But because they introduce everything so well that I'm not really questioning anything about it. And I'm not really questioning the motives of Sophia, of Victor, of Oswald Cobblepot. They made so much sense to me. And by the end of it, I was loving to see these characters and to see what would happen. The next thing I want to talk about, just very briefly, was an anime movie on Amazon Prime by the name of Look Back. If you have not seen this movie, I actually don't really recommend it because it is definitely just depressing. It deals with some very, very heavy loss, grief, and blame. As the main character who wants to develop a manga befriends another artist who is insanely talented at drawing backgrounds. So together they work as a pair to really make an empire of really good manga. But at one point, the background artist, who was a recluse and didn't have many social interactions, wanted to go to art school. When they broke up as friends and she went to art school, she unfortunately found herself in a crazy situation and was murdered in the school. Knowing that, the movie was depressing. It was awful to see. It was awful to see not only the grief that was portrayed, but also this alternate universe that they portrayed as well, to really just show you this other side of what could have been. But I think what really spoke to me is the way that we handle and process grief, especially when we blame ourselves. Because in the movie, the main character blames herself for causing this other person to interact with her, to make these mangas together, and to go to art school. And because she was found in that incident where she lost her life, the main character feels like she caused her death, when it really wasn't the case. I know that blame can feel so powerful when you can trace back everything to a single moment that could have changed everything. But in fact, if that moment hadn't have happened, if that initial spark never happened, then even though you think that spark caused the eventual death, it didn't just cause that. It caused them to live. And I think the main character isn't really understanding that even though she did lose her life in the end, she gained her life too. Because as a recluse, she was not interacting with anyone. Sure, she went to art school and other things in this alternate universe, but in the real world, in the world that was introduced to us first, the main character essentially brings her into the world. She lets her live. They become friends. They have wonderful memories together. They are inseparable and they have a wonderful, wonderful time together. And I think just feeling that warmth, feeling that energy, feeling that life is so worth it. Even though you can trace back this blame and say, I wish I never did this. But if you wish you never did something that caused all this grief and blame in the future, then you are not focused on what it caused in the interim. Because ultimately, a lot of things end. And everyone does die. But in the process, in the moments where someone is actually living, that's where the love is. That's where the life is. And that's where you need to be proud that you did make that decision to talk to her and to bring her into your world. With that in mind, it is a very depressing movie. If you're not up for that, I would not recommend to watch it, but it did mean a lot in that aspect. It had very unique art style too, which I really appreciated to see, especially the opening, when it showcased drawings based on the main character's childhood mangas that you would create. Okay, the last thing I want to talk to you all about today is a wonderful, beautifully animated movie called Robot Dreams. This movie has blown me away. I was not expecting this movie in any sense. I initially saw that it was up for the Oscars for Best Animated Movie back in 2023, and it lost to The Boy and the Heron, which, in my opinion, is a snub. I would have given it to Robot Dreams. But Robot Dreams was such a fantastic movie. It follows the story of the main character, Dog, who orders his best friend, Robot. Now, going into this, I thought this was going to be a commentary about having AI and having robots as friends and companions and as lovers and partners. But it really didn't tell me that at all. In fact, the main message that I got from this movie was not related to a robot in the slightest. It really told me a very heartwarming story about loneliness and disability. So, when we're introduced to the main character, Dog, he's very lonely and he wants a partner, he wants a best friend, he wants everything. And so when he gets Robot, they have a wonderful time together. They're loving life, they're enjoying everything, except there's a one accident that happens on the beach. And during that accident, Robot, Dog's best friend, loses all function, cannot move anymore, is paralyzed essentially from the waist down. For me, I was shocked about the representation of disability in this movie, because seeing the title come true of Robot Dreams, I was so stunned how it portrays someone who has a disability dreaming and wanting a life where they can move again, where they are not hindered by their disability, and that they are loving life to its fullest. Because when something happens like that, where there's a tragic accident or something that you were born with, having something that debilitating and having any sort of problem in your life is awful. So much so that you dream about a life that it's not debilitating you. It's not a problem. And you imagine what life could be. But I love the commentary that it said about relationships, especially when one partner has a disability compared to the other. Because in Robot Dreams, even though Dog desperately tries to save Robot from being abandoned on the beach, Dog ultimately cannot save Robot in that sense. And that's what I feel with relationships. And that's what I feel that I got from their relationship. Even though they had a wonderful time, even though they had genuine love and care for one another, Dog ultimately wasn't someone who was able to help and handle and love Robot enough to overcome this disability. Not that Robot wasn't deserving of love from Dog or that in any sense, but Dog just wasn't equipped with the skills to help and handle the disability. So much so that when Robot goes to the junkyard and meets Rascal by the end of the movie, Rascal is someone who can not only help with a disability, but loves Robot and can accommodate Robot in their life with the disability. Whereas Dog, even though Dog loved Robot, Dog couldn't accommodate and couldn't essentially help Robot enough to make the relationship last, which is a very, very touching story, because at the heart of it all, no one was to blame and no one was at fault for how things happened. And I love the final scene in the end of the movie where they are both dancing and they love the memories that they had with one another, because the love was still there. It's just something happened that drove them apart. Not because they didn't love each other anymore, but because they weren't able to. And they both found new partners that they were able to celebrate everything together with. But moving on and having this new partner who you can love doing everything with doesn't diminish how much fun and how much love and care you felt from the previous partner, even though it had ended. And I really love that. Going through the movie, that blew me away. It was really touching, and I really just wanted to cry at how hopeful and optimistic it was. Because so often breakups happen and they become really, really heartbreaking. But this one wasn't heartbreaking. Sure, it was heartbreaking in one sense, but it led to more positive things. And not only that they found new loves, but they could both be loved in a way that they needed to be. And I love that. I love that messaging of the story, and that there was no ill feelings and that there was no bad blood. But I loved the aspect of Robot Dreams, the fact that Robot as a character has these dreams, has these thoughts of moving through the disability, and all this stuff was portrayed so beautifully that whenever reality snapped back in, it was such a harrowing experience. It was just so haunting that I loved its representation of someone who had a disability. Oh, beautiful movie. I would recommend it to anyone. Amazing, amazing film. And it doesn't have any dialogue. It is such a beautiful film and crafted so beautifully. And speaking about like Arcane with its beautiful animation, Robot Dreams was another type of movie with had beautiful animation and wonderful characters. It was such a sweet, sweet movie. I loved it a lot. Well, thank you all so much for watching. We've reached the end of the video and talked about 4 specific pieces of media that meant a lot to me this past month. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please let me know what you think about the video, what you think about any one of the pieces of media that we discussed. And I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. And if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you had a wonderful month of November. Thank you all so much for watching. I am going to be working on the next video, and I hope to share that with you all in the next month. And I will see you all by the end of the year. Thank you all again for your support, and I'm thankful for all of you. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time.